Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Crash Bandicoot. In the last part, we start off the third island after finally finishing off the levels on the second, and now we're in the generator room, which is actually a very interesting level for a couple reasons. One, these Cortex monitors, if you can find a way, apparently you can actually jump on top of them for some reason. And two, in terms of ideas, it's basically a mechanical temple level. It even has platforms very similar to the ones in the actual temple levels that can fall when you step on them. However, it also has a very unique instance of them. As you can see when I hit that exclamation mark block, the crates in the top right appeared. And that leads to a giant version of those platforms that fall when you step on top of them. However, this one is a bit different in that it doesn't fall immediately. The moment you first step foot on it, unlike, say, bouncing on the boxes like I am, it'll fall down in 11 seconds, which makes me wonder, why give you that much time? I guess maybe to collect the Wumpa Fruit, but at this time you should, if not have 99 lives, be damn close, so what's the point? Also, I like this song too. Now, this was actually, if I recall, the second level that was finished successfully when the game was in development. Which is odd, but also makes sense, because one method of game design that I've always been a fan of is game designers who work backwards. Start with the end game levels, then go back so you can scale back the difficulty appropriately so you don't have any massive spikes. Which I still think Crash 1 has a couple of massive spikes, so they didn't do a perfect job, but the game overall, especially when you're just going through it, is a very stable difficulty curve with only real 2 exceptions. And, well, actually, no, everyone has 2 exceptions in that rule, but in this game at least, but my 2 are both on the third island, honestly. The third island is, without a doubt, the hardest. Now, for some reason, by the way, a weird little graphical mistake. I forget if there are any more throughout the stage. The Cortex monitors we've been seeing throughout the stage so far. For some reason, Cortex is missing the N on his forehead. I don't know why. This was also a level I had a lot of trouble with when I was doing the N.Sane trilogy speedrun, because I was getting a bit too risky with my jumps, getting all diagonal and stuff that I really probably shouldn't have been doing. However, it's also around now that we're going to start doing a lot of backtracking because the, what's it called? The colored gems we don't have yet are all located here on the third island. Which is an odd gameplay balance. Instead of having the colored gems and their paths scattered throughout the entire game, they put most of the paths on the first island and most of the gems on the third. I'm not a big fan of that mentality, though. Crash 2 and 3 did better in my eyes for that because, especially in 3's case, if I recall, the colored gems and their pathways are much more evenly split out. Also, fun facts. Safety first! This is one of the few times we actually get like a little hint as to what's up and coming through the door at the end of a level. Because the character who was on that was Pinstripe Potoroos, and he's our next boss fight. However, as I mentioned, we're getting a colored gem here, the orange gem. And this is a gem we can do stuff with immediately, so we need to head all the way back to Upstream on the first island, and there I go doing that again. Crash N.Sane Trilogy really did fix this very, very, very minor nitpicky issue where you can just hold right or left to go in one direction on all 3 islands. It's such a minor thing, but it helps with me so much. Either way, back into Upstream we go, and as with when we did Jungle Rollers, or no, Rolling Stones, whichever one of the 2 levels it was, we are fast-forwarding the footage until we get to the new section. Really, admittedly, one thing I've never been a fan of with games is revisiting levels in a required manner. Like this, at least. If it's something like alternate exits that lead to new levels, sure, that's fine, but actually revisiting levels just to get something is a very hit-or-miss thing. I guess it also depends on the length of the stage and the kind of game you're playing, too, because I don't mind revisiting stages in a Mega Man X game because I'm done with those stages in like 3 to 5 minutes. And to be fair, the same is done here, but I guess due to the slower platforming, it just feels a bit more tedious to me. Because there are various different kinds of speeds a platformer can go at, obviously. Crash is, especially in Crash 1's case, is a much slower and more methodical platformer. compared to, say, like Mega Man X4 is very, not chaotic, but I guess action-packed level design would be a way to put it. Which also makes sense with this setting, because in a future partially robot-dominated world, or more populous robot world, like the Mega Man series, I would expect more action-packed stuff to happen, rather than a rather relaxed tropical setting. But I say that at the same time, though, Naughty Dog's other major, technically 4-game series, even though there's more than 4 Crash games, but people only really like to talk about 4 Crash games, Uncharted is very action-packed in a tropical setting. Mind you, the amount of tropicalness also depends on the game, because 1 and 4 got really tropical. 2 was very cold in areas, whereas 3 was very arid. Either way, welcome to Toxic Waste, one of my least favorite levels in the game, but not for the level design reason. It's because of the camera in this level's case. Because the barrels that you're being rolled at you, I have a lot of issues judging where they are in relative location to crash. And that's mostly due to the camera. Because let's say the camera's probably at a 87, 88, 86-ish, maybe 85 degree angle to the floor. If it was like a 45 degree angle, I would not have this issue because I'd be able to more accurately judge. And admittedly, when it's just the rolling barrels, it's not that big of an issue. It's when they start jumping like that it starts getting annoying. Well, I guess bouncing is more appropriate. Either way, it's when they start doing that it gets a lot more iffy for me. The N.Sane trilogy did their best to fix this issue, though, because anywhere where the bouncing barrels land in the N.Sane trilogy was given a little impact crater on the floor. So, minor little graphical effect that actually ended up making it an easier time for me. Also, I love the song too. The third island is where most of the best music in the game is, I'll be completely honest. Maybe it's because I like the more technical, not techno, but electronic effect they go for rather than the tropical beats, but it's good music. At the end of the day, though, Toxic Waste on the whole can be troublesome, but it's overall fairly simple. Admittedly, something that I always forget I can do until the very end here is use the Z-axis to jump around the barrels. Which, I guess we all kind of have that in at least one game that we play enough, where there's that one stage we always forget the easy way around things until the very end. This is one of those stages for me. But it does have our blue gem, so now we can get a few more clear gems. In particular, the blue gem, allows us to get 2 more clear gems. One in Cortex Power, and the other one all the way back in Rolling Stone. So let's get that out of the way first. And as usual, with the revisits, fast forwarding until we get to the new stuff. Honestly, Crash 1, I will say, is one of those games that gets a lot easier to do later levels, the farther in you get, because you just see, like, some much worse stuff later on in the game. So early stage platforming really just becomes trivial, almost. Though I will say, something that was a bit hard for me for this LP in particular was Crash's controls. Crash controls well in Crash 1 and the Crash 2 and 3, rather. But in Crash 1, especially after playing N.Sane Trilogy immediately before this, he has a lot of weight to him, and he's really stiff. I think I mentioned that back in part 1, but it bears repeating because it takes a while to be able to make some of these jumps, at least comfortably. Also, a very minor thing that really kind of just helps speed along the game in N.Sane Trilogy, you skip this little gem clear sequence. It basically just, Crash gets the gem out, goes ba-da-ba, and you get the gem added, or the key what should the case apply. I do that every goddamn time. I mentioned before, but I really do like this world map, honestly. This looks really cool. But you know what it always reminded me of? It always reminded me of the Sega Saturn intro for Sonic 3D Blast, for some reason. Either way, time for us to go back to Cortex Power. For the first half of this, it's basically the exact same as how I went through it the first time around. It's the second half where things changed. And even then, there's another way to go around about it than the way I go. More on that in a moment. I still abuse the invincibility, though, because it's just fun to do it. Now, what I'm talking about is you could just get this invincibility box and go back on the previous blue gem. Why? Because it's actually faster to go through the normal path from the previous checkpoint block and come back this way from the front rather than going through this. Because then you only have to go on the TNT block and then you can walk away. Although I wouldn't recommend walking away too far unless you're playing the N.Sane trilogy. Honestly, thinking about it though, even though you do have to backtrack a bit in this stage, Crash 1 gets a bit more credit than Crash 2 and 3 Mice for one thing, backtracking. Because while I have to actually backtrack in the stages a bit more from my memory, the actual in-level backtracking, the camera's either better for it or it's just less harmful. Because Crash 2 and 3, the backtracking, honest to God, is awful. Especially in, which one of the B stages do I always have trouble with? I want to say it's digging it, rather than behaving in Crash 2. I don't like it. And that's Cortex Power. Honestly, going for all the gems in this, all the boxes in this level isn't the worst, but it can still be a bit annoying. Just a bit. And that's another clear gem. If it's not obvious, by the way, by this point, since there are 26 levels to get gems, there are 6 colored gems, 20 colored. No, 20 clear, rather. And time for our next boss against Pinstripe Potoroos, and he was not even on that table. The way this fight works, he's gonna try firing his gun at you, and you just stand behind one of the obstacles so he can't shoot you. You need to hit him either when he's in between volleys like this, or when he's lower on health, when his gun jams. Also, I know it's been there my entire life, but I don't think I've ever taken a good moment to actually look at the pinstripe painting on the left. That's all sorts of creepy looking. This is also the only fight that really has any kind of story implementation aside from the last 2 boss fights. Because you might remember it said on the door at the end of, what was the name of the level? Power generator, generator room rather. That he was the CEO of the power station. That's where we are. That's the power station right behind us, the main core. This last hit is usually the most annoying because his gun jams on top of the table, which can be a bit tricky to reach if you're pretty slow on it. More credit to his death animation in the N.Sane trilogy, though, because he, falls backwards and it's funny. Either way, with that, welcome to my actual least favorite level in the game, the High Road, which, fun fact, there is some evidence due to save file stuff that this may have actually this and the Road to Nowhere may have had their names switched at some point in development. Now, why is this the worst level in the game? First off, that move I just had to pull there where I had to backtrack over nothing is kind of dumb. But also because, imagine the annoyance that was the Road to Nowhere, only with more specific platforming. Because now we have to use the turtles as platforms and trampolines in order to jump over specific things. And I also have a bit of a bias against this level because of the N.Sane trilogy. Because this is the worst relic to get in the main game, not excluding the one DLC level. Because, oh, you fall so much. I know some people like to abuse what I just did there, jumping on the ropes a bit more, but I cannot do that well enough in N.Sane trilogy, at least for getting through the rest of the level. I could do maybe a quick hop on and off in order to get some minor shortcuts, but this level really is just, ugh. It's because of that I just cannot like this song either. They really like to hand you extra lives if it's not obvious, by the way. I get why they would do it though in Crash 1's case, because it's a case of where the game's trying to balance its, at times, kind of odd difficulty patterns with having enough lives to not get a game over. Mind you, I don't think I've gotten a game over in Crash 1 in over a decade and a half. Crash 2, depending on how well I'm playing, maybe, but Crash 1, no. Crash 2 and 3 are honestly a bit more sparse with lives, but at the same time, the levels are generally easy unless I'm just playing badly. Mind you, part of that is also because my most recent game over in Crash 2 was in the N.Sane trilogy. Because of some hitbox things that were going on with me. Also, it's not obvious at this point. I really just do not care about getting the boxes in these bonus stages until I don't need them for my tally in the original version. I do like that they intentionally designed it so that it is possible to get every box in these, though. Because that's just kind of cool design ideas going on. Whoa, I should not have made that. These turtles, as I mentioned before, though, I think, are the actual worst thing in the N.Sane trilogy. Their hitboxes are horrible. And that's the high road. I do not like that level. I probably made it look a bit easier than it actually is, but it's not fun. And that's our 16th gem. In terms of percentages, by the way, I think every gem is 1%, stages are like 2, and I think the keys are like 9 or something ridiculous. Either way, with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, we're entering what is my last of my 3 least favorite levels in the game. See you guys then.